This video is part of the Furniture Flipping 101 Business Management's Bookkeeping module. In this video series, I walk through Sage 50's components to help you better understand how the various parts of a bookkeeping software program work together. In earlier videos, we set up the bookkeeping software, imported and examined the chart of accounts, and entered some purchases. Now we'll look at assembling inventory. Inventory, as we learned in the inventory module, is an asset because it has a value to your business. Assembling an inventory asset takes the cost of goods inputs used to create the item and transfers them to the assembled asset's inventory value. See the Purchase, Assemble, and Sell Debits and Credits Explained video for a simplified explanation of how the accounts work together to stay in balance. In this video, I will show you how Sage 50's inventory feature assembles items and moves the costs from one account to another. For other bookkeeping software, such as QuickBooks, you can use items that tie the income and expense accounts to the asset's sale. You can use the concepts taught in this video to set up any software that uses items instead of inventory assembly. If your software doesn't have inventory or items, you must make adjusting general journal entries to balance the corresponding accounts. I use the categories Decor, Furniture and Hardware in my business and the Business Management course. In my business, I keep paint and transfers as tracked items for my inventory workbook to calculate the cost of goods going into assembled items. But I post their expenses to the consumable expense account 5060 in Sage 50. I've discussed this a bit and I hope it isn't too confusing. I'll explain it again here because it is relevant to the accounts you will choose when you set up your inventory assets. Depending on how you set up your chart of accounts and calculate your cost of goods on your taxes, you can choose one of three options. You can use individual asset accounts for paint and transfers. You can use one consumable account or a consumable expense account. I've included all three options in the chart of accounts that comes with the Business Management course. Once you've chosen a system and set up your bookkeeping software, stay with that method when posting purchases. In the Sage 50 setup video, we'll link the accounts for inventory. The first account, 5060 Consumable Inventory Costs, sets where the additional costs are assigned. I will show you where this is entered shortly. Second account, 5130 Adjustment Write-Off, is for differences in inventory. There's another account, 5100 Inventory Variance, in the individual inventory items that we will use for the inventory assets. You can also add categories in the settings here to link the inventory items to these categories. You'll see how they fit in once we start item assembly. Once you have the linked accounts and categories set up, you can add inventory items. There are three different types of inventory items that we'll look at in this video. First, there are the overall inventory categories like Decor, Furniture, and Hardware. These inventory items work like a bucket that holds the value of that category's inventory assets. You will post all inventory asset purchases to these categories. Second is the Service Item category. Service items, if used, are for quotes and custom pieces and are added directly to the sales invoice. Lastly is the Assembled Item category, where you can assemble items you sell or commission pieces. These items are then added to the sales invoice when sold. Let's create inventory category items. Note the radio button that lets you toggle between inventory and service. Make sure inventory option is selected. Hardware has already been created. Let's add Decor and Furniture. Enter the account number that corresponds to its inventory account. For Decor, that is 1510. If you have renamed these accounts in the chart of accounts, use the new name here. Select the matching category if you have set up categories in your settings. Under Units, I use dollars to simplify my inventory since there are many different quantities and prices per item. Remember, these accounts are like a bucket holding the value of all items purchased for that inventory category. Link your asset account to the corresponding asset account in the chart of accounts, 1510 for Decor, 1530 for Hardware, etc. The revenue account is the account the sale of the item posts to. You will not likely sell one of these inventory assets directly, but you must choose an account. You can change this account should you need to, but choose assembled items or miscellaneous revenue for now. I use the assembled inventory cost for the cost of goods on the inventory category items. Like the revenue account, these items aren't usually sold, but should you sell them, this account is where you would record the item's costs. You could set up a separate account if you find you need one. Variance is 5100 Inventory Variance account. I use service items when creating quotes, but I don't use Sage 50 to generate my quotes. I use Microsoft Word. An example quote is available for download in the Customer Relationships module. But I will show you how to set them up and use them in Sage 50 so you know how they work. Here, because I don't have just one service item like I do with the other costs of good inventory, I use S for service. I have a spreadsheet I use to create quotes, and were I to use Sage 50, I would follow the spreadsheet's numbering to add service items. Toggle this radio button to service. Enter the service description. Select the matching category if you've created one. You might want to have a general category like service, or break it down to categories like table, chair, bed, etc. to make it easier to search and add to your quotes. For units, you can leave it at each. Enter your price for that service item. You can change this later. If you have preferred pricing, you can add it now. Notice that there are only two linked accounts now, revenue and expense. I set the revenue to 40/30 sales, custom work. If you do want to add expenses, your quotes may include the cost of primer, sandpaper, etc. Then you can add those to the sales invoice directly. In the customer and sales video, I explain how the service item expenses are added to the sales invoices. To include the expenses in the final item price rather than individually on the sales invoice, see the upcoming Assembled Item Inventory Asset. If you select a cost of good expense account, the software gives you this odd warning since they should be expense accounts. If you say no, it'll still allow you to use the account. I leave that account blank since the only expense that would be posted from here is time and billing, and I don't account for time and billing. Notice that I haven't purchased any inventory items except for the $4.97 hardware. Let's go and add some items to our newly created inventory asset category so that we can assemble them into an item. The last item that goes into your inventory is an assembled item. These are your created items. They may be a custom piece or a piece you created to sell. Assembled items are added to the sales invoice and they process cost of goods accounts then. To better separate the different inventory classes for assembled items, I use an inventory numbering system of C for custom pieces, D for decor, and F for assembled furniture. To assemble an item, use the Build from Assembly option. The Build from Bill of Materials doesn't work for our purposes. Enter memo for the source because there has to be something there. Comments don't show up anywhere that I've noticed. Assembly components are the individual inventory items you have posted to your inventory accounts from your receipts. Choose item, and for quantity use the dollar value. Add the necessary inventory items. If you're assembling more than one item, you need to update the quantities to reflect the multiplier of the quantity. Any markup on your pricing should be added to the sales invoice, as explained in the upcoming customer and sales walkthrough video. For the additional costs, enter your consumable expenses. These expenses post to the 50/60 consumable inventory cost count that you selected in the settings window. Once your costs are entered, select the magnifying glass under Assembled Items. If you have a repeat item, maybe you do a lot of the same dresser and use the same inventory number, you can select it, or use the Create button to create a new item. Enter your inventory number from the Cost of Goods workbook, if you use it, or use your own number. Then, describe the item using a unique name. The description should match the Cost of Goods workbook description. Under Pricing, add the listed price. If you offer discounts, you can add those prices too. The descriptions here can be changed or added to in settings. The linked accounts are essential, so let's get those correct. Select the 1570 Assembled Inventory Asset account. Use the 4020 Assembled Items Revenue account for assembled items you're creating and selling. You can also assemble commissioned items using the same process. So if the item is a commissioned piece, choose 40/30 Sales Commissioned Work. If you don't want to separate your revenue into two accounts, select the account you have set up in your chart of accounts to recognize your business revenue. You can change the revenue account in the sales invoice as well. The cost of goods account is the 50/70 assembled inventory cost. Ignore those warnings, just say yes. Variance is the 5100 inventory variance account. As a reminder to myself, I have a sticky note with these account numbers on my monitor. You can type in the number and it will pull up the correct account rather than look for the account each time. If you charge taxes, ensure that the tax tab is correct. Save and close. Enter the quantity of 1, assuming you're only assembling one item. Remember, if you're assembling more than one item, you need to update the COGS quantities to reflect the multiplier of the quantity. The cost must be the same for all assembled items or it'll average over the number of items. The unit cost should be the individual item's cost. This value is the same as the total above if you're assembling one item, or the individual cost if you're assembling more than one item. The totals must match. Your in-stock inventory values have now been reduced by the amount used in the item's assembly, and you will see your assembled item listed. forgot to show you how the trial balance is affected when posting your assembled inventory item. Let's look at that process now. I've replicated the furniture and hardware purchases, so I again have inventory to add to the assembled item. Let's create another assembled item and look at the effect on the trial balance. This is where you need to make sure your total costs are the same. Now let's look at the report. So we are moving $50 furniture and $25 hardware inventory, the inventory assets, into the assembled inventory asset. Watch these accounts here, how furniture and hardware will drop because they'll be credited, and the assembled inventory will increase because it's being debited. So this is what the furniture looks like. Now we'll process. Notice how these went from $75 to $150. The $25 is gone, and this is back to the $497. From this screen, you can run your inventory value report for doing inventory. I will create a separate video on adjusting inventory if you would like one. Let me know in the comments below. See the customers and sales video next to see how to add inventory items to a sales invoice and much more.